I want to be able to serve anybody in any way about any topic that I can. If I can actually encourage and inspire and motivate people to take action. And so when I left my career as an insurance agent in 2005 to become full-time self-employed, I did it because I wanted to make a living, provide for my family, simply by doing what I feel most called to do in this world, which is just simply to use my voice either through podcast content or in one-on-one conversations to entertain, educate, encourage, and inspire people.
From humble beginnings, Insurance Claim HQ has grown to one of the largest property casualty firms in the country. We didn't do it alone, and you shouldn't either. Every week, we're talking to claims professionals and top experts from all over, all to help you grow your business and make you stronger. Let's level up together. I'm Galen Hare. Welcome to the Level Up Claims Podcast.
Entrepreneurs and business owners have a lot on their plate. So it's no surprise that for many, a lack of focus and the wrong mindset can hold them back from achieving their goals. It can even mean the decline or death of a business. If this even remotely describes you, this is one episode you can't afford to miss. Our guest today is a business strategy and mindset coach and mentor whose focus is to help you break free from the behaviors, beliefs, ideas, and thoughts that hold you back. Let's welcome Cliff Ravenscraft. Cliff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Galen, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
I've got to ask, your story is just so interesting, right? But before we get into it, I'd like to know a little bit about you. Talk to us about where you're from.
Well, I am from Northern Kentucky, just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, and I come from a ministry background, a professional background in insurance sales for 12 years. I worked for a family agency owned by my mom and dad, started by my grandfather in 1937, and I was next in line to take over the family business until I started a podcast as a hobby in 2005, and that led me down an entrepreneurial journey of self-employment.
Sure did too. 4,700 podcast episodes, I think, at some point, probably more, way more by now, but the last published amount was 4,700, which is just a lot of podcasts. And you were doing them before they were cool, right? When all of a sudden people turned on their iPods and there was this new menu for podcasts.
Yeah, it was actually right when Apple discovered podcasting, I jumped in. So I was among the first 100 or so podcasters in the world. I had jumped in and started my first episode before anybody knew what a podcast was. And it was the most challenging and most difficult thing to, number one, find a podcast. And if you found one, how do you listen to it? It was not an easy process back then, but it was so much fun to find content that resonates with you at such a deep level where you're not relegated to listening to talk radio, which was all politics, sports, cars, and all this other stuff, but it was topics that you were interested in. And yeah, being able to listen to anything you wanted on demand was quite a new experience. And the fact that anyone on the planet with a microphone and a recorder could create their own show and no gatekeeper was just something too good to pass up.
Absolutely. And I think it was like this weird kind of amorphous thing when people saw these podcasts and they just weren't sure what they were. But, and I think they didn't take off as fast as Apple thought they would. But now today they have completely changed the game in everything. So, but that's a big part of it is getting in on the ground floor, I think creates so many opportunities for you. And it's such a cool thing. But I want to talk about, so you mentioned taking over the family business. That was an insurance agency that was started back in the 30s, I think.
Yeah.
That's wild. So talk to us about what that was like. And obviously you're not doing that now, and we'll get into that. But talk to us about what that was like into the early 2000s to step in and take over a family business that's been around for like 70 years. Like, what were the challenges you were facing?
Well, I never did take over the family business. I was next in line. So my dad has since retired, and had I stayed there, I would now own that agency. And boy, am I glad I didn't stay. So I worked in the family business for 12 years. And what I will say is this: before I discovered podcasting, which helped me discover my true passion, my true calling, what I feel is my true purpose in this world, I thought for sure that insurance was it for me, because I come from a ministry background of wanting to serve others, encourage others, help people's lives in a powerful, profound, and positive way. And I felt like, man, what I'm doing as an insurance agent, providing security and safety for people's financial futures, uh, delivering life insurance policies, the proceeds to families of people that I convinced to buy a policy when they thought for sure they never wanted one or needed one. That was rewarding, to be able to know that I was a part of helping that family continue without the mom having to go get 3 or 4 jobs. I was there to help people rebuild their homes after fires and floods and tornadoes and every other thing. It just, so many different things that I was involved in helping people with. And also learning how to deal with customer service issues, serving people through the most challenging difficulties in their life, talking to somebody after, like, being one of the first 3 people to speak to somebody after their daughter was just killed in a car accident. I mean, the things that exposed me to prepared me for the work that I do today. And I just discovered so many powerful life lessons, I guess I would say, through that experience as an insurance agent doing that level of work here in my geographic region. And when I discovered the world of podcasting, I realized that I could take those skills and those experiences and have an audience in the hundreds of thousands and millions around the world.
Wow. I mean, and I got to tell you, it makes so much sense, right? Because often insurance agents, and I think it's an underestimated thing, they're the line of first defense. Even though they can't necessarily help a claim get paid, and we talk about this a lot on our podcast because people always think that insurance agents can just like get a claim paid. So I'll just call my State Farm agent. They can't. But they're the first people you think of when you're in a crisis to call. And I can only imagine that must have been a profound level of experience for you, helping people go through problems, think through them. And I suspect you ended up kind of being a coach before you ever became a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, being a coach before I ever became a coach, in a way, it's only in hindsight that I see this. I was actually a coach back then. My wife and I, when I first got married in 1996, I brought a significant amount of debt into our relationship. My wife was too young to have any debt at the time, but I taught her how we could go into building great debt together, not great wealth, but great debt. And we went down this path for the first few years of our relationship. And then we discovered Dave Ramsey, which there's some people who disagree with Dave Ramsey's philosophies. And I got to tell you, I'm just thankful that I discovered the idea of what he called the total money makeover, this step-by-step process of getting out of debt. And because of the things I learned from Dave, I began to understand the idea of living debt free, at least out of all that personal debt, the credit card debt, paying down all of those loans. And we began to implement that process. And when we became debt free, minus our mortgage in 2007, the whole process of that helped me understand that, gosh, if we can do this, other people can do this as well. So one of the most powerful things that I did as an insurance agent was help people understand the situation that they were in. So I'll give you a perfect example of how I was coaching people. I would have a guy who's 27 years old. He calls me up and he says, Cliff, I need to add this brand new, 2020 or what was it, 2003 Ford Mustang GT convertible, blah, blah, blah car to my policy. How much is this going to cost me? And of course, he had all cars with liability only and everything like that before. And he's like, it's just going to cost it. The insurance rate went significantly up. Now, here's the other thing. He's 27 years old. They have a mortgage. And this was back at the time when, you could actually borrow 103% on your mortgage. You could get a mortgage with no money down. And this guy was in one of those situations. So he almost had no equity in his home, and they're living paycheck to paycheck, and he's out here buying this sports car. And he's like, "How much is this going to be?" And I told him how much it was going to go. He goes, "Cliff, I can't afford that." I said, "Well, let's see what we can do. Number one, can you get rid of the car?" No. Okay, you can't get rid of the car. Let's have a conversation here. First of all, do you have any life insurance? And he's like, "No, I don't need any life insurance. I can't even afford the insurance on this car after what you're telling me." I said, "Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you a life insurance policy, a term life insurance policy. We're going to add all of these multi-policy discounts together, and we're going to do these things to adjust your situation here. But here's what I need you to do. We're going to have you invest into your retirement account so that you will be able to one day not need life insurance." What I was doing is I was helping him understand, number one, buying a life insurance policy today is going to reduce the amount of your payment on your homeowner's insurance, on your auto insurance, now with the biggest portion being this brand new sports car that you got. But it was the first time he'd ever considered the fact that if he died, which by the way, he was the only income earner for the family, he was incredibly well paid. But he had never given any financial thought to these decisions that he was making. And so I sit there, I said, if anything happened to you, what happens to your wife? What happens to your kids? Are they cared for? I he's 27 years old. And of course, some 27-year-old people do think about such things. He hadn't even given it a thought. As a result of, let's just say, an hour and a half conversation with me in my office, he ended up not only buying life insurance for himself, but he also bought a policy for his wife with the child rider, and he did reduce his overall fee on his homeowner's insurance and his auto insurance. But he left the office with an understanding of the total money makeover. I gave him a copy of the book, said, "Read this, apply this." Now, the average person that I did this for, about 3 out of every 10 of them ultimately began working the system, paying down all of their debt, building wealth, and becoming financially free as a result of it. And those are kind of the coaching conversations that I was able to have with people in the past.
I mean, amazing. I mean, and think about like what you did for those folks. Again, even before being a coach. Wow. So I want to talk, we're going to get back into the coaching and back into kind of what you're doing now because it's so fascinating. But you made two really interesting decisions a couple of years apart. And both big personal decisions. So I'd like to kind of, in 2015, coming into November of 2015, where were you at, like mentally, emotionally? What was going on in your life? Because you made a huge change.
Yeah. So in 2015, that would have been the year that I began to feel a little bit burned out as the podcast answer man. So when I left when I left my career in insurance, I left it because I recognized that I could have the kind of impact and influence in people's lives that I was having, kind of just like the stories that I just told you. Basically, the story that I just told you is representative of probably more than 100, 150 conversations just like that. And like I said, because I was in insurance for more than a decade, I was able to actually be on the other side where I'm actually delivering some of those life insurance proceeds and realizing the benefit that it brings into people's lives. I'm like, wow. In 2005, I'm a guy in Northern Kentucky who anyone outside of a 50-mile radius, nobody's ever heard my name before. But because of a podcast about a television show, all of a sudden we now have over 60,000 people. This is just with our first podcast. 60,000 people around the world now have been hearing my voice, asking me questions. And that's what started this multiple podcast, answering different people's questions about different topics, different niche podcasts. I'm like, I want to be able to serve anybody in any way about any topic that I can. If I can actually encourage and inspire and motivate people to take action. And so when I left my career as an insurance agent in 2005 to become full time self employed, I did it because I wanted to make a living, provide for my family simply by doing what I feel most called to do in this world, which is just simply to use my voice either through podcast content or in one on one conversations to entertain, educate, encourage, and inspire people. But in 2005, I did not believe that was possible. I believed that I had to have some tangible thing to give someone for them to give me money. So for the first 10 years, I recognized and realized the tangible thing was, Cliff, you know how to podcast. I'm on an entrepreneurial journey. I want to become a thought leader. I think if I had a podcast, there would be a financial return on investment. Can I pay you to teach me how to launch a podcast? And so from 2005 to 2015, I'm responsible for helping more than 40,000 people in the world successfully launch an audio podcast. But after 10 years, I recognized that most people are asking me the most mundane, boring questions. Cliff, how do I get rid of this buzzing noise? Hey, Cliff, I just published my most recent episode about 45 minutes ago, and it's still not in iTunes. Can you help me solve this? And this is kind of like what I was experiencing as an insurance agent. I can tell you the amazing, powerful stories that I told you earlier about what I loved about my insurance career. But quite frankly, most of my day, almost every day, was, Cliff, I know that you faxed me proof of insurance cards to my office this morning, but I left them at the office. I'm at the courthouse now. Can you fax them right now? And by the way, can you drop everything and fax them now? And I'm like, I know I'm meant for more than this. How can I do these really important things when there's all of these urgent things that could quite frankly be done by anyone else? And so for me in 2015, I got bored and burned out by answering technical questions that meet an instant, immediate need for someone as far as they're concerned, but the lasting impact of that just doesn't carry any weight. When I knew for a fact that I literally could have a single conversation with someone and forever transform their experience of life, I could actually help them change the way that they are perceiving the world, the way that they see things, that will radically break them free from all of their conditioned limiting beliefs and help them move forward with greater confidence and clarity and boldness, knowing that everything's going to work out on the other end. My past does not equal my future. These were the kind of conversations. And so in 2015, I made the transition. I shut down 100% of every stream of income related to my brand called Podcast Answer Man. And I made the decision to be known as the Mindset Answer Man.
I love that. But I think a big part of that sometimes when you make a big change is you have to put your money where your mouth is, right? And you have to be willing to kind of make your own changes in your own life. And you did. You stepped up, you figured out what your passion was, you did it. Trust me, I know about the mundane work. Like being a lawyer, it's the same thing, right? They forget all the little deficiency notices we get in filings and how the margins have to be a certain spacing, and you file something in California and the numbers have to be just right. But you also made some personal decisions, if I understand correctly, around the same time. So in 2015, something was going on, obviously, because you decided to engage yourself physically, big time. 6 days a week, I think.
Yeah. So in November 2014, I was speaking at an event for a gentleman by the name of Michael Hyatt. He had written a book that was a New York Times bestselling book called Platform: How to Get Noticed in a Noisy World. And for many years, I was speaking at his event, teaching his community how to successfully launch a podcast to build a platform on for their entrepreneurial journey. And what happened was in November 2014, I was in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And at the time, I weighed almost 300 pounds. 2 weeks before that, I had bought a brand new suit for that speaking gig because I, quite frankly, had put on a couple of extra pounds. And I picked it up, put on this brand new suit, everything fit, walked out the door of the store with it. 2 weeks later, I'm in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I wake up in the hotel room that morning that I'm getting ready to do my speaking gig. I'm going to be speaking before noon. I go to put my suit on, and the jacket coat wouldn't fit. In fact, it was so tight that one of the buttons popped off. And I'm like, what the heck? And I felt so miserable, so overwhelmed. And I'm like, man, the one thing that I know that I'm here to do is I'm here to encourage and inspire people how to launch a podcast and get them going down that path. And I know that my credibility is not impacted by how much of a lack there has been in my physical activity and my physical fitness and my physical health and stuff like that. But internally, my whole mission, my whole purpose is encouraging people to live the life for which they were created. And quite frankly, yeah, I make a lot of money. Yeah, I've built a massive business. Yeah, I have lots of people who listen to my voice. But there is one significant area where I am not living the life for which I'm created. And that is I have no concern at all about my health. There's a total lack of physical fitness. There's a total lack of care for what food I'm putting into my body. And I was struggling on this up and down weight loss journey. And so I spoke at the event anyway, with my jacket held open throughout the whole talk. I'm sure I looked funny, but it didn't matter. I had been professionally trained how to communicate. So I got up on stage. It wasn't about me. I made it about them, got a standing ovation. Everybody had committed. I'm going to go launch a podcast within 90 days. Mission accomplished. Afterwards, I go out into the hallway, and immediately there's about 20, 30 people who wanted to talk to me. They're like, Cliff, oh my gosh, I've been following you for years. I can't begin to tell you how much of an inspiration you are. I'm about ready to leave my day job because I want to do what you have done. I literally want to do what you have done. And some of them even said, I've been following your journey and I'm willing to do it exactly the way that you have done it. And there's a part of me that felt like this massive fraud. Nothing that I've ever said or shared as far as the success of my business has been anything other than the authentic truth. It's just that what I sacrificed to make that a success isn't right. And I knew it wasn't right. There were so many times I put work above my self-care that I'm like, I don't want to, I want all these people to podcast. I want all these people to find work that they love. I want these people to get their message out into the world, but I don't want anyone to do it the way that I've been doing it. And quite frankly, I'm concerned that I'm going to die soon because of what I've done here. Well, I'm having all of these conversations with God, and Ken Davis, who was Michael Hyatt's business partner at the time, he was also my mentor in public speaking. He came to me and says, Cliff, I'd love to personally mentor you. He told me about his journey, and he says, listen, if you'd be willing to make a few commitments, I'd be interested in personally mentoring you through this journey. I think I could help you get and achieve some of the things you want to achieve. And here's the commitments. He says, I want you to read my book called Fully Alive. Number 2, I want you to read a book called Younger Next Year. Number 3, I want you to commit you'll work out 6 days a week, every week for the rest of your life. And the final commitment was in 6 months from now, you and I will complete a sprint triathlon in my hometown of Nashville, Tennessee. And I said, let me pray about it and I'll get back to you. We're sitting at a speaker dinner, by the way. And then jokingly, about 30 seconds later, I said, hey, Ken? He says, yeah. I said, I've prayed about it. I'm in. And so that began that journey. So November 14th, 2014, I have deemed that that's the day that I decided to start living. So I had a life, but I began living fully on November 14th, 2014. It's where I stopped putting myself last. up until then, I felt like a life worth living is a life where you sacrifice everything in yourself and you give everything to others. You always put yourself last. And I can tell you right now that does not lead to great results. And yeah, I made that commitment. I did all of those things. And from the time, let's see, November 2014, by 2018, I had dropped all the way down to 180 pounds and put on about that's with about additional 25, 30 pounds of muscle mass that was added. And I successfully worked out 6 days a week, actually went up to 7 days a week for the probably 5 years up till 2020. And I had successfully done that all the way up to the pandemic. The only thing is, though, is I learned a lot of things along my journey, is a lot of mindset related stuff. And I created neuro associations. My identity is I am a gym rat. I go to the gym. This is where I find my life. This is how I did it. And I put it all on autopilot so I could focus on other things, but still have all of this. And when they closed the gym for 2 weeks to slow the spread, and it turned out to be much longer, I lost sight of that. And quite frankly, for about 3 years, I started going like this again until May of this year. I've been back at it. And I can tell you real quick, Galen, I track everything very heavily. Today will be my 254th consecutive day of working out 7 days a week again. So I'm back at it.
Congratulations. That's
Absolutely.
hard.
Thank you.
It's really hard to do. And I struggle with the same things, like one of the reasons I was so interested in that. But yeah, the commitment to just working out. And like at some point, I think you like cut out sugar.
Oh, yeah.
Really hard to do. That's like, I mean, that is like the most addictive poison we have in society, But good job. That's huge. And, I think what's cool about that, what I didn't expect to hear, because, I can only find out so much by listening to other episodes and reading, is that COVID got you off track. And I think that's really cool that actually happened and you got yourself back, because I think we idolize people, and I think that's bad. I think that we see someone that does something and we're like, oh, they're perfect. I just need to emulate what they do. But we're all freaking human.
We are all human. And you know what? The thing is it's not about figuring it out and saying, I've mastered this. The reality is that, yeah, you could master something. And if nothing ever triggers anything that was the root cause of the problem in the first place, then wonderful, beautiful. You get the results that you always want. However, there's oftentimes things that weren't necessarily dealt with at the surface, below the surface, that can easily get triggered once again if the routines that you place. And so, I'm all for habits and stacking habits, and I'm all for creating neuro associations and all of those things. And in fact, I think you have to. I think it is a part of the journey. But anyone who thinks that if I just get the right routines and make the right commitments and I'm consistent and I do it long enough, eventually I have solved the issue. No, that's not true. What you have done is you've actually, you certainly have dealt with the results of what had gone on. But you're not always consciously aware of all of the things that led you to make the decisions. And there's so many things that you and I have been conditioned to believe from childhood, those little voices in your head that you don't even know that they're there. There's a childhood friend of mine, Galen, that I didn't even realize this happened. But it was like, man, what is going on here? Why do I feel this way? And why did I go and emotionally eat in this situation? And all of a sudden I began to ask myself, why did I do that? And I'll never forget the first time in elementary school, in front of everybody on the playground, my best friend on the planet says, wow, Cliff, looks like you got the Dunlap disease. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, it looks like your belly's Dunlapped over your belt. And everybody laughed. And I felt humiliated. And from that moment forward, I adopted the belief and identity that I am a fat person. And I didn't
Mm.
even realize that until much later when I got triggered back in. It's like, why is this still here? And of course, other things that were underlying came out of it. It's like, oh, there was still more to deal with here.
And that's kind of, as we almost run out of time, but we're not quite there yet, which is important. Um, that kind of dovetails into what I believe from everything I've read and listened to be the core of like your teachings, which I love, which is you have to break free from like the behaviors and the beliefs that hold you back.
Yes. There are four things that all sound like that. Two of them sound like they're together. It's breaking free from your pattern of thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and behaviors. So your thoughts and your beliefs. And by the way, a belief, my life changed, Galen, the day that I learned that a belief was not an undisputed fact that is just true. But a belief is nothing more than a thought that you have a feeling of certainty is true. All right. So another way of saying it is when I learned that a belief is nothing more than a thought that you have a habit of thinking to the point where you eventually believe it's true. I'm like, oh my gosh, you mean all of these things that I believe and that are indisputable could all be disputed? I could investigate all of my beliefs and I could actually change my thoughts and form new beliefs. That was a game changer. But yeah, every result that you and I get in life, every result is perfect for the system that we have created. But it's perfect for the belief system of that we have created. So everything is determined based upon our thoughts, our beliefs, our patterns of emotions, and our patterns of behaviors. And so what we think and how we feel leads to the actions or behaviors that we take. And every behavior that we take will get some sort of result. And so you can never create lasting changed results without changing everything on the other side of the equation. You have to change your thoughts, you have to change your beliefs, you have to change your emotional state, and you have to change your behaviors, your actions.
Hmm. I mean, yeah. Like what else? There's nothing else there. It's so easy yet so deep, right? Because these things are not things you just randomly picked up one day. You picked them up through your entire life, just like that story you just told, right? About your friend. And I think we all could like definitely use some introspection to kind of see when those pivotal moments happened. But how many entrepreneurs really do that without help from someone?
Yeah, well, not enough. I will say this. The ones who are truly successful have figured out some of the most important aspects of seeing the label from outside the bottle that you're in.
Love
One of
that.
I know that we're running close on time here, so if you want to wrap and do whatever, I'm fine. But I will tell you, my life changed forever when I discovered the Mastermind principle from the book Think and Grow Rich. And when I began to do life with other people who were already succeeding at a level that I desired to succeed at, who were consistently open to the idea of questioning what we believed, how we were feeling, that we were all committed to unceasing personal and professional and spiritual development, evolution, growth. Once I got into a group like that, and I've been in a group like that every week since October 2010, my life has never been the same.
And I'll tell you, that's like, for those of you listening at home, that's like 17 more podcast episodes because there's so much to that. But Cliff has been a pioneer in really pushing mastermind groups and helping form them and run them, and that's something we'll definitely put that information in the notes. And I will testify that I've never worked with Cliff in a mastermind group, but they have single-handedly changed our business. I'll be leaving town for a week next week just to go to an annual mastermind that I'm with, and we spend like a week together every year. And it's one of the most transformative experiences for the business, for me personally as well.
Yeah.
But I don't even think the employees and the staff realize that so much of what we do here is hatched at a breakfast, at a lunch, at a dinner, walking from one building to another on a Tuesday afternoon in a random location somewhere in the world while talking to someone else who has nothing to do with our business whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. They say that we are the average of the 5 people that we are influenced most by. And I love this. If you don't like the results that you are getting, Tony Robbins says the first thing that he recommends is upgrade your peer group. And I love that phrase so much. I actually launched a podcast called Upgrade Your Peer Group. And since you're going to put notes in there for people to learn more, I would encourage people to go to upgradeyourpeergroup.com. There are only 5 episodes of this podcast where I share practically everything that I would put into a book if I were going to write a book on mastermind groups, my experiences, everything that I think you ought to know. 5 episodes, upgradeyourpeergroup.com.
Cliff, you've been so great. I appreciate you so much. Before you go, though, I do have to ask you, what does it mean to you to level up?
What does it mean for me to level up? Wow, there's so many different directions and so many different philosophies I've kind of contemplated. For me to level up, I'm going to go a little esoteric and philosophical. So for me to level up, it means me getting closer to the understanding that I'm an unlimited being with unlimited power of creation. And for me to limit up oftentimes means deconstructing any beliefs, thoughts, feelings, or actions that have limited my understanding of just how powerful I am and just how unlimited the things that I could create are. And so, quite frankly, for me to level up is a lot of process of unlearning and then intentional learning. It becomes a deep study in, okay, now let me focus on what I want to create and figuring out, how to take the resources that are already available to me and create this stuff that I want to create in the world. So there's a lot of deep layers in that answer, and I think some people it'll resonate with. But to level up for me is a lot of unlearning.
I love that. Cliff, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Galen. Thank you again for having me. It's a true honor. I really appreciate it.
I'd like to thank Cliff for joining us on the show. It's so interesting that if you really identify the differences between your beliefs, your ideas, your emotions, and your behaviors, you can really start to peel back those things that are holding you back, not just in your business, but also personally. Follow us on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player.